You know what I like about chess? Very little. I'm not terrible at chess, but that's fine, because Pawnbarian, which is about chess and not pawn, is not really like chess at all, and it's also not pawn. Confusing introductions out of the way, Pawnbarian is a little bite-sized chess-themed deck-building puzzle battler game, something which I think we can all agree we've been clamouring for, and what it lacks in sexy images of ladies wearing negligee, it more than makes up for in being a damn fine little lunch break styled think piece. You get the choice of 3 heroes, which you unlock as you play, and you're given the option of 3 different dungeons, again, which you unlock as you play. Have you never played a game before? I shouldn't have to explain this, but here I am. Regardless, chess. That's what it's based on, but it's very, very different to chess. For a start, it's a lot less boring, and I understand it better. Also, I get to play against an AI opponent instead of my mate Chris, who's really good at chess, and I've got to be honest, he's the only person I know who plays chess, and I can't beat him. I need to dump Chris and get better friends, one who aren't good at chess. Pawnbarian, though, that's what we're talking about, so let's get back to that. You are generally tasked with wiping out every enemy on the board, and it can take some time to get used to the big heap of information you've got to deal with at any given time. You've got your deck, your discard pile, your active cards, your health, the enemies on the board, your placement, the position the enemies will attack from, the special abilities of those enemies, a gold bonus based on how fast you can take those enemies out, special cantrips that you need to know the abilities of. It sounds like a lot. It is a lot, but it does seem to come naturally enough, helped in part by knowing how the pieces in chess work. So let's start with the basics. Each turn you get 3 cards based on that boring old game that Chris is good at. On any given turn, you can select 2 of these cards to move your protagonist around the board. A butt plug, for instance, can only move directly forward and attack diagonally, whereas the Pope can move in any direction but only by 1 square. It's chess! You know chess! What you're left with, at its very core, is a moving puzzle. How do you get in, attack some enemies, and get back out in such a limited set of moves? Well, that's the game. Some of the pieces will have special abilities attached, such as the cantrip, which gives you another card when you use it, or the shield, which blocks some damage. Some of the enemies will actively leave behind a blight, which can damage you if you finish your turn in a square. Some of the enemies are absolute dicks and won't let you attack them when you're either not next to them, or you are next to them, or when you're somewhere else. It sounds incredibly complicated, I know it does, and I especially understand that if you've never even seen a chess before. This is going to sound like a really shit version of Monopoly, but it's great. It just works. But I also have some issues. There's a lot going on, a hell of a lot, and while your mind is concentrating on one thing, it can fail to register something else. You could use a card to make a move, for instance, and then realise that you've simply misread the board, but there's no undo function. Presumably, this is because if you use a cantrip, for instance, you've revealed the next card on your deck and gained some sort of advantage, but it won't even let you undo without that. When you're trying to plan your way around the board, the game will helpfully highlight how many enemies are aiming for a particular square on the board, and that's really helpful, but not incredibly clear. I can't, for instance, hover over a particular square and see who is trying to attack it. I instead have to hover over each of the enemies to see who is attacking what square and line them up that way. These are minor niggles, but they do crop up, and by the very nature of the game itself, there are elements of luck involved which will make proper chess heads absolutely blow their Kasparovs. This is a deck builder built around the concept of chess. And as such, what you draw from the deck is either going to be exactly what you needed, exactly what you didn't needed, or exactly what you sort of can maybe do something with, possibly. The trick here is to build your deck to benefit you in any particular run, and that knowledge comes through repeated plays and deaths. Each time you beat a level, you reach a shop where you can spend your gathered gold. You can increase your health, and you can buy more cards to go in your deck. Depending on the dungeon you're trying to defeat, which cards you buy are vitally important. In the second dungeon, for instance, most of the enemies have the annoying ability to activate whenever you use a cantrip. They'll perhaps move or attack or do some other thing you definitely did not want them to do. That doesn't mean you shouldn't add cantrip cards into your deck. They are incredibly useful, but maybe you want to tuck a few shield cards in there? Maybe more than usual? You know, just in case things accidentally kick off? There's no denying that you can do everything right in terms of building your deck and making your moves and still fail. That's just the nature of this type of game. But it all happens with such speed. A round of Pawnbarian lasts maybe 10-15 minutes at most, and you really won't be that bothered if you lose. It's a bite-sized chunk of puzzling fun that scratches a deck builder's itch. It's a thinker with a side dose of, screw you game, I would have had that if you hadn't drawn me 2 butt plugs. There are 3 characters to play with in the game, each with very distinct powers that completely change the way you have to solve things. The Pawnbarian himself, for instance, converts pawns into queens if you draw one while you're at the top row of the board. This is an incredibly powerful move that you'll miss immediately when you move on to either of the other characters who do completely different things. There are skill modifiers, endless dungeon runs, and honestly, for such a small package, there's a hell of a lot that just focuses back in on the core gameplay. It's a weird mishmash between chess and not chess. There's no permanent upgrades, there's no pictures of boobies, and my mate Chris doesn't own it, so I'm technically better than him at it. It's also priced perfectly for what it is, in my opinion. At roughly £7, if you enjoy the basic game, then there's a lot here to play with. Are you going to sit there and play it all day long? Probably not, but you wouldn't do that with chess either, unless you're Chris.